Can you imagine feeling so trapped, so hopeless, so helpless, that the only act of social protest you can come up with is to set yourself on fire? What kind of repression, what kind of intolerable, suffocating oppression must one go through to be pushed so far? When the 26-year-old Tunisian street vendor Mohamed Bouazizi set himself on fire, it was because he couldn't see an alternative and he couldn't take it anymore. Within hours of his desperate act, thousands were in the streets. Within 2 months, millions all over North Africa were rebelling against their dictators. Now, I want you to remember these days. Early 2011, the enthusiasm, the excitement, how everybody was watching old rebellions day in, day out, watching what's going to happen now, what happened today. Everybody was there. A lot of people were saying, yes, finally, we can see freedom being pushed by these people. And some people were thinking, great, but why did it take them so long? Why did it take so many people so long to put up with so much oppression? And this was my research question. I was asking why people put up with authorities that are abusing them, that are oppressing them. I was asking why people put up with being oppressed. Now, this is a huge question, and it took me on quite a journey. I'm not done yet, but I thought I can share with you what I found. I thought I can share with you a story of obedience. Now, I'm a political scientist, and many fields, including mine, have done their fair share of work to understand this phenomenon. But the study of obedience so far has largely remained in the field of psychology. So that's where I started. Following the Second World War in particular, psychologists tried to understand what produced the horrors of the Second World War. They tried to see if the famous, or maybe infamous, Nazi defense, I was only following orders, has any validity. So they designed tests and they designed experiments. First was the Asch Experiment. Solomon Asch designed this very simple experiment. Which line is equal in length to the one on the left? Now the trick is, of all these people you see there, only one is actually a subject. All the others are confederates of Solomon Asch, and they're giving the wrong answer again and again and again. The outcome, almost 80% of all subjects start lying outright and giving the wrong answer to conform. Then, of course, there's the famous Stanford prison experiments. Philip Zimbardo recruited 24 students to act as prisoners and as guards. It was an experiment designed to be 2 weeks to see how people react to these conditions. Students reacted to their roles by getting into them in an unexpected way. Prisoners started putting up riots. Guards started abusing the prisoners. They beat them. They beat them with batons and fire extinguishers. Off-duty guards would come off just to see if they can beat somebody or maybe go home later. So Zimbardo canceled the experiment in the 6th day. Then, of course, there's the famous Milgram Experiment to obedience to authority figures. Now, Milgram ran a variety of these experiments, but this is the one that is quoted most often. Every single one of his subjects electrified some random stranger up to 300 volts because they were just told so by a guy in a lab coat. 65% of all his subjects actually went to the 450 volts. That was marked with 3 X's and a huge capital letter, danger, just because the guy told them to. Now, these were amazing insights, but they were not what I was looking for. I was looking for obedience in the victims and not in the perpetrators. So, with the invaluable help of Dr. Donald Dutton here at UBC's Department of Psychology, I started my own research. The two of us together, we looked at 10 different genocides. We checked survivor accounts, we checked perpetrator interviews, even forensic accounts. And what we found was mind-blowing. In Cambodia, 150 people were walked to what they knew is going to be their grave for 6 hours by 4 people. In El Salvador, 1,000 people were tortured and killed over 2 days by 24 people. In Rwanda, 5,000 people waited for 5 days, so the 30 people that were guarding them can get reinforcements to kill them. In Ukraine, 35,000 people walked for 9 hours and then waited in a field for 2 days to be killed one by 800 people. Now, at this point of my research, my friends stopped going out with me. I was growing morbid and dark. But it is also at this point of my research that I realized one thing. The obedience I was looking for was not the individual's obedience. It was a societal phenomenon. It was the way societies were geared to obey. My perspective should have been my own field from the beginning. So I switched with some relief to political science again. And the moment the lens was changed, something else came into focus in a very large way. You see, above and beyond the psychologies of individuals involved, there are giant structures engendering obedience in people, states. And as the modern state came to be, it has faced countless revolts and uprisings and obediences, and they reacted to it. So my new research strategy emerged by itself. How did states deal with these people who wouldn't do what they were told? How did states put in place these people who disobeyed? To give answer to that question, I had to go back to the beginning of the early modern state and see what they did with that. And here's what I found. Every time there is a big disobedience incident, every time there is a rebellion, every time there's an attempted revolution, states quickly react and equip themselves against similar acts of disobedience. They come up with new laws, new regulations, new structures, even hire new people to make sure this kind of stuff doesn't happen again. States discipline their subjects slowly, and at every generation, they get better at getting obedience from them. Let me give you an example. In 1525, roughly the time we associate with the rise of the early modern state, 300,000 people rose up in one of the largest rebellions in European history. They wanted to revolutionize the feudal order of domination, and they actually occupied, for close to a year, an area the size 1/3 of Germany. And as you can see, it's almost 1/4 of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, at the time, it would be common for a person never to see an authority figure for his entire life, except for the priest of the village and maybe the elected chief. So these people naturally belonged with their communities. Communities pushed back against the lords when there was a new tax. Communities sued their lords in courts. And these people wanted communal autonomies. They wanted to elect their own bishops, they wanted to elect their own judges, they wanted to elect their own heads, they wanted to have regional parliaments. And they took to the field for these ideals, and of course were slaughtered. Ideals make very poor armor. Now we have documents and the minutes of the meetings of the lords when they discuss the rebellion. They talk about troop deployments. They talk about strategies. They talk about the rebel armies coming from the south and the west. And they talk about what laws they need to come up with to make sure that doesn't happen again. They know their issue is communal action. They know it. Communal acting, to them, makes it difficult to identify the ringleaders. Communal action makes it easy for their subjects to fight together. So one of the lords, the Prince Abbot of Kempten, Sebastian von Bretterstein, stands in front of the lords, just like I stand in front of you, and he says, let's change the laws. Let's make it so that from now on, only individuals can come in front of us, and not communities. And so they do these changes in 6 months. Some of these laws and regulations, surprisingly, are with us 5 centuries later to this day. And things do not really change very much when the rebels actually get a hold of state power. Now, in 1794, a few years after the American Revolution, American farmers in the West rose up against the new tax. They said, no taxation without representation. Remember, that's exactly what we said against the British 15 years ago. Now, the new US state knew what could happen from small uprisings with catchy slogans. So, with haste, they put up together an army of 13,000, which is bigger than any army commanded during the American Revolutionary War. And they had George Washington, the president himself, came down and led the army against the farmers. Washington became the first and only US president to actually have troops in the field. And again, we have documents from the meetings where the state officials discussed the rebellion. They are very much aware that the input that's going to come from this tax is negligible. In fact, someone says, well, the cost of putting an army of 13,000 together and sending it halfway across the country to fight these people, we need a lot more taxes to pay for this. And then this Secretary of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, says, it's not about the revenue. It's about social discipline. Taxes should be paid without a fight. Now, what does that mean to us? It's obvious that the legacies of past state actions, legacies of past rebellions, bind us in a very solid way. We have no more autonomous communities. Tax revolts do not exist anywhere anymore. We just pay taxes automatically, too. So does that mean that resistance is futile, even harmful? When we do it, the state learns what to do and then takes care not to have it done to it again? Is that the message I have? No. To the contrary. My message is the exact opposite. States have been taming people for centuries. Yet, everywhere you look, you see people up in the streets asking more freedom, asking for more rights, asking for an end to oppression. Everywhere. How do we explain this if we have been tamed? One of my favorite authors, Neil Gaiman, has a quick story about this. You see, in one of his worlds, people are living in an awful place, and they organize and they come up with a plan. They go to bed together, making a plan to dream of a better world. And every one of them manages to dream of a better world. And when they wake up, the world is as they have dreamed. Like all good stories, Gaiman's story has a small part of the truth in it. And this truth, I would tell you, can be found here among the Egyptians. Now, the Egyptians did not fight the state troops. They did not attack the police. They did not burn the dictator's palace. They just said, that's it. I'm just going to go out into the square, and I'm not going to leave that square until this is no more, until this oppression is gone. That was one thing that the state was not prepared for. It took them 18 days to get rid of Hosni Mubarak, one of the longest-serving dictators. They imagined a better world, and they imagined a better way of getting at it. Every single right that we enjoy today, individual rights, representative politics, equality before the law, they were once wild ideas in somebody's head somewhere. So this is the power inherent in us, that we do and we can constantly imagine better worlds. And when we act on this imagination, we can bring them about. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but once we throw them into the river of history, they become real for somebody in the future. What the state does to tame people is to get them to obey. Now, I cannot tell you what is it that you obey without thinking. I cannot tell you what it is that needs your imagination right now. Maybe it is the way we're burning away the planet. Maybe it is the way The massive economic inequality is throwing us back to the Dark Ages. Maybe it is one of these many injustices that you can see outside every day. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. I know of one thing, though. Political change happens because someone somewhere has a good idea, imagines of a better way, and then goes out and tries to get it. We are only lost when we cannot imagine an alternative. Mohammed Bouazizi burned himself because he could not see an alternative. And to me, that was the greatest oppression visited on him, that his imagination was blinded. So this is how my story ends. So long as you can imagine better worlds, and you can find the power within you to act on this, we will never be tamed. Thank you.